Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Dhari Jasodhanandana Brajachandana Jasodhanandana Brajachandana Jamunatira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Dhari Jasodhanandana Brajachandana Jasodhanandana Brajachandana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatara See Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya We're in for a real treat tonight. Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto 10, Chapter 8, according to our acharyas, we're going to hear it again. The pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan have different characteristics, and these childhood pastimes are said to be especially madhurya, or very sweet, and not just like, well, there's other pastimes that are also very sweet, but our acharyas consider this very sweet. So this is after the name-giving ceremony, which came after killing of Putana and Shakatasura, then a name-giving ceremony, and then they had a big festival back in Vrindavan with the priests, and Krishna and Balaram are growing up together, and they're beginning to crawl. Okay, I have the wrong section here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. When Krishna and Balaram, with the strength of their legs, crawled in the muddy places created in Braja by cow dung and cow urine, their crawling resembled the crawling of serpents, meaning they didn't move in a straight line. And the sound of their ankle bells was very charming. Very much pleased by the sound of other people's ankle bells, they used to follow these people as if going to their mothers. But when they saw that these were other people, they became afraid and returned to their real mothers, Yashoda and Rohini. Now this is Prabhupada's purport at Chapter 8, Canto 10. Yes? When Krishna and Balaram were crawling about Brajabhumi, they were enchanted by the sound of ankle bells. Thus, they sometimes followed other people who would enjoy the crawling of Krishna and Balaram and exclaim, "Oh, see how Krishna and Balaram are crawling." Upon hearing this, Krishna and Balaram could understand that these were not their mothers they were following, and they would return to their actual mothers. Thus, the crawling of Krishna and Balaram was enjoyed by the people of the neighborhood, as well as by Mother Yashoda and Rohini, and the two children themselves. Vishwanath Chakravarti writes, with the movements of their knees and feet, Krishna and Balaram moved about in a crooked way, in the dirt mixed with cow urine and milk in the large courtyard. The sound of their ankle bells was pleasing, like the sound of kartals, or the voices of the gopis and gopas. Upon hearing this, the cowherd men became blissful. When strangers came in the yard, the two boys, thinking they were their mothers, would joyfully crawl after them, and then suddenly, understanding they had made a mistake, as if in fear, they would crawl back to their mothers. they were playing the part of ordinary children who make mistakes and experience fear, though they're actually not ordinary children. Jiva Goswami writes, they crawled about in a crooked path. This indicates their strength, even in crawling about. Shukadeva does not compare their feet to lotuses because he realized lotuses are a poor comparison to their feet. When their feet are compared to lotuses in other places, it should be understood that those words are the realization of others. The yards of many places in Braja became muddy because of the cow urine and cow dung. The plural is used to indicate the many places. They followed some people who came there thinking they were their relatives, and after understanding they were not, they went to their mothers. They became very frightened, like other small innocent children, since they were absorbed in their pastimes. Gosha, pragosha, ruchiram, in the verse, can also mean their feet were attractive, causing loud exclamations, pragosha, of the cowherds, gosha. They said, how wonderful that they are crawling. Their feet loudly jangled with their ankle bells in the midst of the commotion of the people. Now comes some more extended, this is Sandarbha commentary, Jiva Goswami. Repetition, parentheses, abhyasa, in the Bhagavatam makes clear the previous statements. Krishna is clearly shown to be Swayam Bhagavan by the Bhagavatam, whose feet are respected hundreds of times by all other scriptures, with the help of other texts such as Gita, Gopaltapani, Upanishad, and other scriptures. Other Puranas also state what Bhagavatam states, that Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. For instance, Brahmanda Purana says that the name of Krishna is Shuka Vag Amritabdindu. The name of Krishna is the moon, arising from the ocean of the nectar of Shukadeva's words. Paragraph. Since it has been shown that Krishna is Maha Vasudeva, it follows that Baladev. Now, a lot of this commentary is about Baladev, because Krishna and Balaram in their childhood pastime, so it's in the early stage of their pastime, so a lot of attention is going to Balaram. And who is he? What's his position? It follows that Baladev is Maha Sankarshan. Whatever form Krishna attains, his associates should attain corresponding forms. Thus, it is incorrect to think that Balaram is some Avesha avatar. This comes up several times, apparently, during Jiva Goswami's time. That was what some scholars had to say. It is seen by the descriptions of Krishna and Balaram that they are similar. Krishna and Balaram, with the strength of their legs, crawled about zigzag in the muddy places of Braja. Another quote. The Brahmanas, this is, I think it's the Brahmanas, the wives of the Brahmanas who fed Krishna, the Brahmanas that denied Krishna for some foods. The Brahmanas then came to their senses and began to feel great remorse. They thought, we have sinned, for we have denied the request of the two lords of the universe who are engaged in spreading human pastimes. Another reference, chapter 38 of Canto 10. Akrura then saw Krishna and Balaram in the village of Vraja going to milk the cows. Or later, the two mighty armed lords shone splendidly in the arena. We know what arena that is, the wrestling arena. In the world, the sun and moon are described together. The sun and Venus are not described together. Quite logical. Thus, in Hari Vangsha, the glorification of Vasudeva, Krishna, and Balaram are compared to the moon and the sun. Quoting again this Akrura chapter, two exalted personalities beautified the cow pasture with the impressions of their feet, which bore the marks of the flag, lightning bolt, elephant, and goad and lotus. Thus, Balaram has the qualities of Krishna, not Prithu and other Avesha forms. It's a Balaram Tattva topic. And like nixing this apparently prevalent idea that he's a Avesha avatar. His glory is described, Canto 10, Chapter 15. My dear Parikshit, that Balaram killed Dhenukasura is not a wonderful thing, considering that he is Bhagavan, the unlimited, and the controller of the entire universe. In him, the entire cosmos rests as cloth depends on its threads. Then we're going to go Jiva Goswami's Krishna Sandarbha. Anuchad 84. Now that it is clearly proven that Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of Lord Vasudeva, it should be also accepted that Lord Balaram is the origin of Lord Sankarshan. And other associates of the Lord are the origins of Lord Pradyumna, Lord Aniruddha, and other incarnations. Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and his associates are, in some way or other, his expansions. Paragraph. Although someone may think that Lord Balaram is an Avesha avatar, this is not true. Lord Balaram is repeatedly described as equal to Lord Krishna. And he gives a series of quotes. One is, this one is crawling with Balaram, Krishna and Balaram. Then another from chapter 23, which is similar to that the Brahmanas lamenting. The Brahmanas, engaged in the performance of sacrifices, began to regret their sinful activities in refusing food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They said, we are now certainly undone, for we have offended Lord Krishna and Balaram, who are the supreme controllers of all the universes, although they appear to be ordinary human children. And then Akrura. When Akrura entered Vrindavan, he saw Krishna and Balaram engaged in supervising the milking of the cows. Krishna was dressed in yellow garments and Balaram in bluish. Akrura also saw that Krishna's eyes were exactly like the beautifully grown lotus flowers of the autumn season. Then again, the wrestling arena. Krishna entered the wrestling arena with Balaram. They both had long hands. They were beautifully dressed, and they were attractive to all the people assembled there. They were dressed as if they were going to act on a dramatic stage. And they drew the attention of all the people. That's again on Balaram's position. And we're now going to go to Priti Sandarbha. What pious acts did Nanda perform to cause such affection? These are quoting two verses from later in this chapter 8. So Nanda's pious activities, Yasoda's pious activities. something similar to the reference of the cowherd boys and their pious activities. Sukadeva Goswami is remarking. What pious activities did Nanda perform to cause such affection? And what pious acts did most fortunate Yashoda perform so that the Lord drank from her breast? Great devotees sing of the activities of Krishna in his childhood, which Vasudeva and Devaki could not experience, and which even today destroy the sins of all people. Paragraph. Those are verses from this chapter 8. In the 11th canto, at the end of the narration about Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna in general are said to act as udipanas, stimulations, for bhakti, but the pastimes of his childhood are singled out as most excellent. Here's the reference, 1131:28. The auspicious exploits of the attractive incarnations of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, and also the pastimes he performed as a child in Vrindavan, are described in this Srimad Bhagavatam and in other scriptures. Anyone who clearly chants these descriptions of his pastimes will attain supreme bhakti to Lord Krishna, who is the goal of all perfect sages. So, Prabhus, please chant these pastimes. Paragraph. The excellence of Krishna's manifested pastimes in Vrindavan are of many types. Some show excellence of Aishvarya. For example, Krishna showing Brahma that he is Lord of millions of universes, and the form of rasa, of eternity, knowledge and bliss. Some show compassion, such as Krishna's giving Putana the position of a nurse. Some show sweetness. That's this evening's verse, crawling on his legs and following the elders as they're passing through and then running back to the mother and father afraid. Sweetness. Then other references from his childhood pastimes. Later in this chapter, 29 from chapter 8, your son sometimes comes to our houses before the milking of the cows and releases the calves. And when the master of the house becomes angry, your son merely smiles. Sometimes he devises some process by which he steals palatable curd, butter, and milk, which he then eats and drinks. When the monkeys assemble, he divides it with them. And when the monkeys have their bellies so full that they won't take any more, he breaks the pots. Sometimes, if he gets no opportunity to steal butter or milk from a house, he will be angry at the householders, and he will make the small children cry. It actually says he pinches them, and they cry, and then run away. And chapter 11 of Canto 10, praised by the elder gopis, the Lord, like a puppet on strings, sometimes danced. Like other boys, sometimes he sang, and sometimes he acted ignorantly. Same chapter 11. Sometimes Krishna and Balaram would play on their flutes. Sometimes they would throw bilva fruits using slings. Sometimes they danced, making their ankle bells tinkle. Next, chapter 12. O king, one day Krishna decided to take his breakfast as a picnic in the forest. Having risen early in the morning, he blew his horn and woke up all the cowherd boys and calves with its beautiful sound. Then Krishna and the boys keeping their respective groups of calves before them, proceeded from Braja to the forest. And chapter 15, 2 quotes. In the company of Balaram, Krishna, whose pastimes are praised, sang along with his followers when the highly intoxicated bees began humming. Same chapter 15. Krishna's hair, covered with the dust raised by the cows, was decorated with a peacock feather and forest flowers. He glanced charmingly and smiled beautifully, playing upon his flute while his companions chanted his glories. The young gopis, all together, came forward to meet him, and their eyes very eager to see him. And returning back to chapter 8, a verse we haven't gotten to yet, text 10. As Krishna danced, some of the boys accompanied him by singing, and others by playing flutes, hand cymbals, and buffalo horns, while still others praised his dancing. That's Priti Sandarbha. And now another section, Priti Sandarbha, Anuchhed 158. The childhood of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is glorified in these words of Srimad Bhagavatam. In this chapter, text 46 and 47, speaking of the austerities of the two, Yashoda and Nanda. And that Vasudeva and Krishna didn't experience the childhood pastimes, which are so great that simply chanting about them vanquishes the contamination of the material world. Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, however, enjoyed these pastimes fully, and therefore their position is always better than that of Vasudeva and Devaki. That's in this chapter 8, towards the end. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, after describing Krishna's pastimes in a general way, and after explaining that Lord Krishna's pastimes arouse devotion, bhakti udipana, in the hearers, how are you feeling about your bhakti being aroused by hearing these pastimes? Like we forget what's going on, the COVID-19 and everything. It's just like it's very attractive, very powerful. What's Donald Trump doing and everything? His latest blah blah. After explaining that the Lord Krishna's pastimes arouse devotion, bhakti udipana, in the hearers, it is said that Lord Krishna's childhood pastimes are the best of his pastimes. There, in the Bhagavatam, it is said, we read this already, I'll read it again. The all-auspicious, spelling is not right. The all-auspicious exploits of the all-attractive incarnations of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also the pastimes he performed as a child are described in this Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures. Anyone who clearly chants these descriptions of his pastimes will attain transcendental loving service unto Lord Krishna, who is the goal of all perfect sages. Lord Krishna's exalted Vrindavan pastimes are of many kinds. This is repeating. Some pastimes are Aishvarya, such as the pastime where he shows that if millions of universes are present in his eternal spiritual form, full of knowledge and limitless bliss, there are also his pastimes of compassion, Putana, allowing her to become his own mother. That in the Madhurya pastimes, like we're just reading, Lord Krishna's sweetness is also seen in these words. Our dear friend, so we read this, what, the friends of Yashoda are speaking to her what Krishna does. And they speak like they're criticizing, but as they're speaking it, they just become so joyful. And here it specifically says, if he gets no opportunity to steal butter and milk from a house, he will be angry at the householders, and for his revenge he will agitate the small children by pinching them. Then, when they begin crying, Krishna will go away. Priti Sandarbha. His activities such as birth and playing as an infant serve him as udipanas. His birth is shown this way. This is from chapter 5 of Canto 10. When Krishna appeared as the son of Nanda Maharaj, fully devoted, Nanda was overwhelmed by jubilation. After bathing and purifying himself and dressing properly, he invited brahmanas who knew how to recite Vedic mantras. His play as a child is illustrated. This is this verse, crawling, running when he saw that they weren't their mothers or relatives. Later, 2 verses later, the cowherd ladies, giving up their household chores, would stare intently at the 2 boys, engaged in infant pastimes, seen especially by women, as they firmly caught the tails of calves and were being dragged from place to place in Braja. The women laughed and became filled with joy. And continuing, Priti Sandarbha. Lord Krishna's birth was already described. Quote, dressed with muddy earth mixed with cow dung and cow urine, the babies looked very beautiful. And when they went to their mothers, both Yashoda and Rohini picked them up with great affection, embraced them, and allowed them to suck the milk flowing from their breasts. While sucking the breast, the babies smiled, and their small teeth were visible. Their mothers, upon seeing those beautiful teeth, enjoyed great transcendental bliss. Within the house of Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd ladies would enjoy seeing the pastimes of the babies, Rama and Krishna. The babies, would catch the ends of the calves' tails, and the calves would drag them here and there. When the ladies saw these pastimes, they certainly stopped their household activities and laughed and enjoyed the incidents. And now here's a long and final section. This is Rupa Goswami from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's very interesting. The 18 great faults are mentioned in Vishnu Yamala. You list them. bewilderment, sleep, error, material attachment without prema, material lust which brings suffering, and so forth. Jiva Goswami gives commentary. He goes through each of the 18. That's why I'm skipping reading them. However, these same bad qualities are considered good qualities in Krishna in relation to the devotee's prema. Thus, moha, that's the first of the 18, is illustrated as follows. Brahma Vimohan Lila, chapter 13. Thereafter, when Krishna was unable to find the calves, he returned to the bank of the river, but there he was also unable to see the cowherd boys. Thus he began to search for both the calves and the boys, as if he could not understand what happened. 3 more faults: sleep, exhaustion, and toil. Parishrama is the toil, are illustrated as follows. Quote, chapter 15 of Canto 10. Sometimes Krishna grew tired from fighting and lay down at the base of a tree, resting upon a bed made of soft twigs and buds, and using the lap of a cowherd friend as his pillow. Error, or Bhrama, Brahma, is illustrated as follows. That's this verse. He was, crawling and seeing some people with tinkling of ankle bells and thinking maybe that's their parents, and they found out, he went afraid and returned back. So he was in error or illusioned. Attachment without prema, however, does not exist in the spiritual realm. Rukshita rasata. Material lust which brings grief, ulbana kama, also does not exist, because in Krishna it takes the form of prema. Then fickleness, lolata, becomes a good quality. So here's, in this chapter 8, text 29, our dear friend Yashoda, your son sometimes comes to our houses before the milking of the cows. We read all this. There is fickleness, he pinches the children. Intoxication, mada, is illustrated as follows. Chapter 35. As Krishna respectfully greets his well-wishing friends, his eyes roll slightly as if from intoxication. He wears a flower garland, and the beauty of his soft cheeks is accentuated by the brilliance of his golden earrings and the whiteness of his face, which has the color of badra berry. Mada, he's as if intoxicated, seeing his friends. Envy, matsarya. This is chapter 25. By my mystic power, I will completely counteract this disturbance caused by Indra. Demigods like Indra are proud of their opulence, and out of foolishness they falsely consider themselves the Lord of the universe. I will now destroy their ignorance. Matsarya, envy, transcendental. There are many clear examples of violence, so they're not given. Lying is illustrated when Krishna and the Pandavas disguised themselves in front of Jarasandha, and other pastimes, like in this chapter 8. "My dear mother, I have never eaten dirt. All my friends complaining against me are liars. If you think they are being truthful, you can directly look into my mouth and examine it." That's the example of lying. Anyway. Examples of anger or krodha are also well known, so he doesn't give any. Hankering, akanksha, akanksha, hankering, is illustrated as follows. When Mother Yashoda was churning butter, Lord Krishna, desiring to drink the milk from her breast, appeared before her, and, in order to increase her transcendental pleasure, he caught hold of the churning rod and began to prevent her from churning. That's hankering. So faults become qualities. Worry, asankha, asankha. When Krishna was unable to find the calves and their caretakers, that's cowherd boys, anywhere in the forest, he could suddenly understand that this was the work of Brahma. That's the example of worry. Absorption in worldly affairs, Vishva, Vibhrama, is shown in having the desire to maintain the universe related to his devotees, such as Brahma. Doesn't give a verse. Prejudice, Vishva Matva, Visha Matva, prejudice, is illustrated as follows. I envy no one. This is Bhagavad Gita 9:29. I envy no one, and I am not partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but, this is the prejudice, whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Prejudice. Dependency on others is a fault, and the Sanskrit word is parapeksha. Parapeksha is shown as follows. I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires. I sit only within the core of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee, even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. We know what that verse is from, right? Canto 9, Chapter 4, Durvasa Muni. Therefore, it is said in the Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 77, quote, how can lamentation, bewilderment, material affection, or fear, all born out of ignorance, be ascribed to the infinite Supreme Lord, whose perception, knowledge, and power are all similarly infinite? Again, paragraph. Lamentation, bewilderment, and material affection and fear, when they originate from ignorance, are definitely not present in the Lord. However, lamentation, bewilderment, material affection, and fear, when they originate from knowledge, do exist in the Lord. These qualities originating from knowledge, such as bewilderment, arising from prema for the Lord, are also present in the devotees. And he quotes, O Shaunaka, greatest of saints and devotees, when Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami in this way, this is 10 12:44. When Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami in this way, Shukadeva Goswami, immediately remembering subject matters about Krishna, within the core of his heart, externally lost contact with the actions of his senses. Thereafter, with great difficulty, he revived his external sensory perception and began to speak to Maharaj Parikshit about Krishna Katha. And that's the end of this evening's commentary. More. Tomorrow. So a little summary, we're hearing about the childhood pastimes of Krishna that are especially, repeatedly said, especially sweet. They're stimulations for ecstatic love, and particularly the love of the Brijbasis and the love in this transcendental state of Vrindavan. And the name, form, qualities, pastimes of the Supreme Lord outside of Vrindavan, or the Lord of Vaikuntha and hearing his glories. It's like we were reading in Brihat Bhagavatamrita when some of the assistants, the residents of Vrindavan, resident of Vaikuntha, were chastising Gopakumar. Don't do like this. This is not appropriate. Learned people, they just recite standard prayers that glorify the opulence and the quality and everything of Lord Narayan. And then some others said, well, this is in one of Lord Narayan's forms, and so it's very appropriate here in Vaikuntha too, because it's one of his forms. And then there's another group, because there's this kind of discussion in a number of places in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. There's the more confidential personalities who say, why do you even talking like this? These are particularly appreciated pastimes by the Lord, and he derives great pleasure hearing these things. What are you talking about? Why are you even discussing this? So there are different scriptures that make different references. And so some people like this, and some people like that, some people like the other. And to get the big picture of what's the big picture, this is the essence. The Bhagavatam is that essence. And it includes all these different features. And the commentary is helping us understand, the Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, all those really lengthy commentaries of Jiva Goswami from the Sandarbhas lay it out very clearly, like in detail, and again and again and again and again. So that we get, it's all there within the Bhagavatam. So people that have this inclination or that inclination or the other, they go to the Bhagavatam, and its perfection will be found, because it all leads you to this most exalted feature of the personality of Godhead in Vrindavan. It leads you there. And it stimulates, just like the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it stimulates the nature of the soul to be engaged in service. That's what the mantra means. Please engage me in your service. And then there's varieties and varieties and varieties of services and moods of service, even within a particular category of service. So it's packed up in the Mahamantra and expanded most perfectly in the Bhagavatam, making clear this mood, and another mood, and what's the superlative position. So there's forget, something like 14, 16 verses that are just his childhood pastimes. We're taken one at a time because there's lots of commentary about them. Very interesting presentations. There's no fault within Krishna, but whatever may exist in Krishna is not a fault. It's a glory. See if there's some discussion. We've been going almost an hour. Go ahead.
Maharaj, you were reading in the translation that there is the comparison of Krishna and Balaram as the moon and the sun. So I just wanted to understand, like the sun is more brighter than the moon. How is like Krishna compared to the moon and Balaram to the sun?
I think it's the other way around.
Okay.
Because the moon reflects the light of the sun. So Krishna is the sun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
This sound system is much better than temples. I can hear everything you say very clearly, and I strain in the temple. So it
We
just
can have all our classes here, Maharaj.
yeah, that's great. I like that. I like that. Or improve the sound system in the temple, one or the other. Go ahead, keep going.
So I have another practical question. So you were speaking about how there are different modes even in the same service. Different devotees serve with different modes.
Sure.
So like particularly I was thinking about
Deity service.
yes.
Let me guess.
Yes.
Or book distribution. Okay. Go ahead.
So, so where is the place for feedback? Because everyone is doing the service with the mode to please the Lord. So,
well,
is
there's
there
nothing
a chance?
wrong. The diversity is fantastic. The concern should go: are the standards being followed? And within the standards being followed, there's diversity of moods. Is that okay? It's pretty simple. Is that okay or not okay?
Yes, it is. I was thinking also that while the standards are being followed, still it seems like I'll be more particular. I was mostly thinking like if we see the dressing in Vrindavan or in Mayapur, every day it's the same. There's just like everything looks same. We don't know if the same pujaris they're doing or different pujaris doing it, but the darshan is the same every day. But when it comes to our temple,
In Vrindavan, it's not always the same in Vrindavan.
means the way they put the
No, that's not my experience. That's not my experience.
Okay.
I mean, maybe they've changed, but I doubt it. But let's take how Romapada and Satya used to dress the deity. It was, there was variety, but there was a certain
standard.
well, in addition to standard, a certain like how they make the turbans. And I've seen many different kinds of turbans, but they would have very standard turbans. But then the ornaments and the flowers and the variegatedness, what implements they're holding, the flute changes. So there's it, and one can study and see from day to day the distinctions, even with the same pujari. What to speak of from one pujari to the next. And I believe in Vrindavan, it's different pujaris. They take turns over a period, at least the way that we're doing it is for 1 month someone dresses this deity, and then next month someone dresses the same deity. So it's never, if someone gets attached to dressing, this is my deity, get away. And so, and even within one person's month, they may have some so don't get hung up on it. There's different ways of doing things, cooking, and preparing like this and preparing like that. But some, there's not an unlimited range, even with a good cook. And same with any service. Next. Nilamandra, you have something? Okay.
Maharaj, as I was hearing the commentary you were reading, one thought that came to my mind was that the devotees of Krishna in Vrindavan, especially the parents of other children, when they are actually complaining, it seems like they're not really complaining, but they're enjoying Krishna's.
Yeah. They're coming in that mood, but it's not in that mood.
Yeah.
They're not like, somebody turned the radio up really loud and you go complain to the neighborhood, turn your radio down. Or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Or some, yeah. So in that sense, the appreciation I was thinking of is like, as you were reading so many acharyas' commentaries, that this is an appreciation, like without this guided, I guess, introduction to or exposure to the various acharyas' commentaries on the Madhurya Rasa, I think people can easily get disturbed or misunderstand these pastimes, especially as you're pointing out the faults, to take it as mundane things and anybody can imitate.
Well, Prabhupada did in one sense, it's adequate just reading Prabhupada's presentation, because he knew his audience and he knew that the potential for being misled and confused and so forth. But I like because it's available and it doesn't take away from what Srila Prabhupada did. It complements what Srila Prabhupada did. Because and their audiences were different. Chronologically, they had different audiences. And they had different audiences in mind. Jiva Goswami's audience was more towards the scholarly people. So it's very high-level scholarship, because he had that capacity. And Sanatana Goswami, so even amongst them, their audience was different, their style was different, their personality was different, the way that they expressed themselves was different. So, but it just adds, for me at least, it adds to the line from which Srila Prabhupada has come, and it adds credibility and strength to his being a transparent representative of that line. I've given thought about this quite a bit, because devotees aren't used to hearing these things; they're used to just Prabhupada's. So it may not lead to wholesomeness. It may lead to an unwholesome curiosity. I have some concern like that. I'm doing it anyways, because because of the reasons that I mentioned. For me, it adds to the appreciation of the authenticity of our founder Acharya, and how he transparently, in simple language, represented to his audience the same messages.
Practically, I was taking that point that with the guidance, or under the guidance, as a guided commentaries in a guided manner. You're leading this discussion, so I felt that's more helpful. Obviously, Prabhupada's purpose.
Good.
And
Good.
I have a question about practical service thing. As she asked, DT worship, and you mentioned about book distribution. Because of the situation, whatever is happening, not doing anything, but at the same time, personally, I'm keeping it that this time is to go deep into the activities of chanting and hearing, with the intention that as Krishna may desire for opportunities to engage in the outreach or book distribution specifically, hopefully that's in line with Krishna's plan. And
different book distributors are responding in different ways. I'm sure you're aware. And some people are finding, newer opportunities because of the challenge. I mean, here's a few things that I've just, it's not my main absorption, but a few things that I've thought of. And that is, gather up the references that are there in Prabhupada's books to speak about why calamity happens, or even specifically epidemic, or even specifically, there was some quote from conversations, some quote about quarantine. So take passages and pass them on to people that you have contact with, and encourage them. This is in Prabhupada's books, please read them, and so forth. And have you read this book? This teaching is over here. Or speaking in general to people that may or may not already have books. That why do essays that Prabhupada has written, or your own realizations about calamity, why does it arise? What is it a sign of? And what's the antidote to that which caused it to arise? Ignorance and ignorance activity, and sin and suffering for sin. And the antidote Vyasadeva saw was the Vedic literature, knowing that the age of Kali would be like this. And here we are. And sometimes it rises and it falls, but it's always something. And the remedy is, so people to buy the books or people to sponsor the books, it seemed like a good opportunity for both. And to read the books, those three. And cultivate those people to find other people. To get this knowledge and put it in their hands so that at least they have it. I mean, this is my language is blocks of time. If there's some amount of time dedicated to that, and you just invest time, invest energy and enthusiasm in this amount of time on a daily basis, then you'll start to think of ways, and then you'll have, you just have to manage your time to do all of it within the time that you've allotted. I'm sure there's ways. Sponsorship of books. And that's an easy way when people are sitting at home and reading the books, give knowledge to others, because why are we in this situation anyways? It's not just, eating bats or cooking up epidemics in a laboratory or whatever, people are saying out there. It's ignorance and sin. And what's the antidote? And it's not. So the age of Kali looks like this, and this is the remedy. This is the Vyasa, this is the Vedic remedy for this disease. Not just the COVID-19 disease, the material disease. And encourage people. So I don't know how people are going to respond to that. Some people will, some people won't.
That's really helpful, Maharaj. Thank you.
How are we doing? You have something? No? Okay. So let's do online.
This question is from Sucharita Mataji. She asks, I've been chanting extra rounds for the last 2 weeks in gratitude for someone for their health and well-being. Is it okay to do that?
Yes.
To what extent the extra rounds will help them?
That's up to Krishna.
We have a number from Sri Radhika. By striving for offenseless chanting, I move from Namaparad to Namabhas. That striving fluctuates between the extremes of non-existent to intense from moment to moment. Since most of the time I'm spaced out, even though there's a desire to not be so, am I stuck in a quagmire of accumulating more offenses than achieving purification of heart?
That's a question? No. The answer is no. It's a gradual process. It's not accumulating more contamination.
Next question. Since hearing and chanting are like 2 tracks of a train, pause. So similar to offenses towards the holy name, are they offenses towards hearing, or do the same 10 offenses apply to both processes?
I don't see why not. I've never read anything from our acharyas that says yes, but it certainly makes sense that it would, because they're all basically they're inattentiveness, accepting something that is spiritual to be not spiritual, having misconceptions, spiritual misconceptions. Next.
The commentary listed how different pastimes are imbued with different moods. For instance, compassion in the pastime with Putana, and Aishwarya in the pastime with Lord Brahma. Is it correct to understand that these are not buckets? For example, compassion is permeated, it seems, in every pastime.
Yeah, that's right. But there's an emphasis or pronounced feature for sure. In some.
This is from Vidyasaran Potinedi. Can you please suggest some practical steps for cultivating the right mood in practicing devotional service?
Gosh. Steps in cultivating the right mood. Well, one step is associate with people that have the right mood. That's a big step. Not to say that that's not happening, but that's a big step. And, associate with means hear from and serve. That's how we associate. Read Prabhupada's books so that you'll get a clear picture of what the right mood is. And then make your best effort to, especially those things that really make sense, you apply them in a consistent manner. And strive for offenseless chanting, always. So those are 3.
This is from Amara Mataji. What's the difference between cows of Vrindavan and cows of the material world Cows of Vrindavan are wish-fulfilling cows, but cows in the material world have to suffer so much.
That's a big difference. The cows in this world have material bodies, and the cows in the spiritual world don't. The cows in the spiritual world, they see Krishna, and the cows in the material world don't. The cows in the spiritual world, they talk. They don't just say moo. And the cows in the spiritual world, they're associating with other pure devotees like themselves. And the grass is really special in Vrindavan too. The spiritual grass is really special.
This is from Varsana Mataji. One of the, quote, fault my cousin one time found in Krishna was he seems narcissistic. Asking us to chant his names, my cousin asked, why should we, quote, please him in order to go out of samsara?
Well, we should please him because he's the source of everything. And we have an eternal relationship with him. And that's our eternal relationship with him is to please him. And that's just the reality of transcendence. And if someone doesn't accept the reality of transcendence, then they won't be inclined. But what Krishna is asking for us to chant his name, not because he's narcissistic, because it's our real benefit. He wants us to be happy. It's not narcissism. He wants us to be happy. And the happiness is when we act in terms of who we really are. And if we don't act in terms of who we really are, we're not going to be happy, no matter what we have or what we do or what we don't do or anything like that. He's asking us to chant his name because he's our well-wisher. It will make us happy because that's our natural position. He wants us to become healthy instead of diseased. So somebody who's averse to Krishna or envious of Krishna won't see like that. They'll say, oh, garbage. So, they won't be able to hear. They won't be able to chant. So give them prasadam. Go ahead.
Sure, I'm drawing a blank.
You done?
No, this is a question. This is from Paramarupa Prabhu's.
Is it appropriate or not?
No, it's appropriate. I'm forgetting. Atulya, thank you. What is, Atulya Mataji asks, what is the path of devotees who perform devotional service for the sake of learning knowledge and becoming learned? For gaining knowledge and becoming learned.
Mixed devotion. Mishra Bhakti. Gyan Mishra Bhakti. What's the purpose or destination?
What is the path?
The path?
Of devotional service.
Well, that's what most people do. to do devotional service. They cultivate, they're hankering for knowledge because we've been trained up like that.
And sometimes that attitude hampers going deeper into such a relationship with them.
Yes.
Is it best to keep distance or do something to help them? What would be some of your recommendations?
Just be a good devotee. That's my recommendation. Other persons are who they are. That's their free will choice, culminating in whoever they are. And what should we do with those who aren't like we are? We just be ourselves. Try your best to point to the bhakti principle and de-emphasize anything other than the bhakti principle. That's what you can do, and give association to such persons. I mean, if they're obnoxious, that's another thing. But if they're just prone to gather knowledge, that's okay. They'll become purified. With the subject matter is Krishna coming in disciplic succession, they'll become purified. Look at Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, for example. Or many other people that devotees have influenced, Prabhupada influenced, persons that were intense, scholarly people. Not everybody, but some persons were moved by his bhakti. So you just be as strong in the bhakti department as you can in the association with those people. Don't judge them. They're wherever they are. Attract them to the bhakti principle by the bhakti principle.
Prasanna Mataji is presenting this question from her son Govinda and admits it's out of topic. From the recent festival, how is it that Prahlad was a devotee when his father was a demon?
How did it happen? How?
How is it?
How is it?
That Prahlad was a devotee and his father was a demon.
Well, that's better than the other way around. The Supreme Personality of Godhead was wanting to show the glory of his devotee Prahlad, that although he was born with misfortune, meaning that born in a demoniac family, the real qualification to attract him was bhakti, not birth. We read that the other day about Prahlad. When the goddess of fortune and the demigods and others were unable to pacify the Supreme Lord, but Prahlad was, the acharyas comment, it's not that he just didn't care about them or something. Rather, the Lord had a purpose. So the purpose was to show that the main consideration for his pleasure is bhakti, not your birth or any other kind of material consideration. Krishna wanted to show, the personality of Godhead wanted to show that, and so he had Prahlad born in a demoniac family.
This is from Giri Votikota. While chanting, my mind goes to the image of the Lord's sweet pastimes, Krishna and Ram crawling in Nanda Maharaj's home.
Great.
Is this okay?
It's okay.
But it doesn't go to the sound.
No, that's not okay. Keep practicing.
This is from this is from Radha, Atulya Mataji's daughter. This is an interesting one.
She's always got something interesting.
Can God make another person God and then not be God himself?
Radha, you're so clever. And then be God himself again. He can do anything. So it's not that make somebody God, because you don't make somebody God. God meaning that which is the source of everything doesn't become made. That's the nature of the question is misleading, because you don't make somebody the source of everything. The source of everything is the source of everything. But he can invest potency in someone so that they exhibit power that looks like the power of God, because it's the power of God. It's an Avesh avatar. And then take a subordinate position to that person who he has invested power with. But he doesn't, create the source of everything. So God can mean something lesser than that. God can mean, Ishvara. So God can create someone who is an Ishvara of something by investing potencies in somebody. So that sense of God, but not the other. The source of everything isn't created. But someone exhibiting Ishvara capacity, that can be, sure. But now he doesn't give up the position of being the controller or Ishvara, unless, just like we read, the Lord Vishnu says to Durvasa Muni, I don't have independence, I'm dependent on my devotee, so you have to go to my devotee, because whatever he says, that goes. That's what I'm going to do. So he can subordinate himself to his own devotee, which means the devotee becomes more powerful than him, because he subordinates himself to his devotee. But it's out of affection. It's not out of transcendental reality. It's out of affection. Pretty clever question, Radha. Got to hand it to you. Go ahead.
This is from Prakash Govindam Prabhu. In the spiritual world, Krishna doesn't perform this and other Naimitika pastimes. However, these pastimes are wonderful. Why doesn't he perform them?
He performs these pastimes that we read in the spiritual world. They're Nitya Lila, except for the birth pastime.
So back to cows. Amara Mataji has a follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
We suffer due to our karma. Do cows have karmic reactions too?
No. All living entities, the human form of life generates new karma, and other living, I'm looking out the window, there's some trees out there. And they've taken that form of a tree because of their past deeds, and now they're living out the fruit of their past deeds. So same with cows. Any living entity that gets a material body, it's because of their past deeds. And those that don't have any past deeds anymore, they're all dissolved. They don't need a material body anymore. So there's the answer to your question. They're not generating more karma. They're living out their past karma, their past free will choices, getting such and such body, whatever that is, the forms of life.
It's from Sri Jiva. Yesterday in class, you said, Krishna is here and not here. I don't understand.
I'm not sure I understand it either, but I can try to explain it. And there are multiple ways by which Krishna is everywhere, and there's some ways by Krishna is not everywhere. So he's everywhere through his energy. He's everywhere through his expansion as Paramatma. You say it negatively. There isn't something that exists where Krishna is not there. Because where his energies are, Krishna is through the agency of his energy. So Krishna is everywhere. But on the other hand, his pastimes in the spiritual world are in the spiritual world. Like, in your chessboard, one of your favorite activities is playing chess. So in your chessboard, each of those persons on the chessboard, that's not Krishna and Krishna and Krishna and Krishna. Playing on his flute and dancing with the cowherd boys and the gopis and the cows. Moo. That's not on your chessboard. But the all those moving pieces on your chessboard, those are expansions of Krishna's energy. So Krishna is there in the form of his energy. And within every atom, he's there through his expansion. But his Bhagavan feature is in Goloka, engaging in the pastime that we're hearing about.
This is from Srujana Mataji. Once the karma is completely burned, the living entity dissolves, meaning does it exist somewhere?
The soul exists, and that's the living entity.
That's the last question.
Okay. Last time around. Yeah.
Maharaj, we were talking about attentive chanting and offenseless chanting, and
Your favorite subject.
but like Maharaj, how does one achieve attention while chanting?
Effort and mercy. How did Mother Jasoda bind Krishna? And you could, give expanded adjectives and details about effort and details about mercy, but the combination of the two. I am thinking different, but whether it's this or the approach that someone may take may be this. It doesn't mean this is right for everybody. What the end result of absorption in the sound of the holy name, whether it's this approach, that approach, this principle, etc., etc., that's not the essence or the key. The key is absorption in the sound of name, shelter in the lotus feet of the holy name through sound. However that's accomplished. And that's effort and mercy. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question of what she's asking. So, Maharaj, is it proper to pray for mercy while chanting?
Yeah, you got it. If you don't, it's just your effort, and that's not going to make it. Follow-up question to her follow-up question. Look what you started.
This is regarding the attentive hearing, because in the 3rd chapter of 1st canto, there is this verse where Prabhupada explains about rapt attention.
We're going to speak about it.
He gives series of steps that
Yes, it
one's
does.
activities have to
Yeah.
be pure of mind.
Then it says, but somehow or other, if you can.
Then hearing, at least if one gets an opportunity to hear from a pure devotee, then they can see Krishna through the pages of Bhagavatam. I believe that's what the concluding sentence
Okay.
is. So, does it mean that obviously without the qualification above that, I feel like is nowhere near for me. But since we are hearing from a pure representative, the potency of the power of the message of Krishna in the Bhagavatam is acting upon our hearts.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.